Bitcoin was down here at 31,000 and has recently risen up to about $38,000. Has had a bit of a pullback, and the question here is, as it reaches this fundamental resistance area, what does this mean for Cardano, and is this likely to affect ADA? With Bitcoin dominance, it's our expectation that Bitcoin dominance itself will actually rise up towards the 50% area. We have the 50 moving average, the 100 moving average, and the 200 moving average just above. So we know that our average value is actually higher than the current value of ADA. So we're below average value, and it begins a countdown towards smart contracts actually reaching the mainnet, right? So once we have that smart contract functionality, and we've spoken about this many times over, we are expecting to see about 100 or so companies potentially migrating from Ethereum over to Cardano. What happens when you have smart contracts? Well, you're going to need tools, right? When it comes to Cardano, they're actually going to be putting into prototype the Hydra solution. This actually sees 1 million transactions per second. Cardano update.
Let's get into it.
So today, guys, we are going to be taking a cheeky look at Cardano, and we're going to actually be touching on quite a few different things in this video. So do stay tuned as we go through things like the Alonzo rolling out onto the testnet, which will obviously be going onto the mainnet shortly. We're talking about the new suite of tools for developers to use with those smart contracts. So we're talking about the scalability, and we'll obviously, of course, be talking about how Bitcoin has reached a critical area where it could see Bitcoin break up to the upside and take the altcoins with it, including Cardano's ADA, or potentially have a pullback, which again could have an implication for Cardano. So as we get into this video, guys, if you do find it useful, informative, do go ahead and hit that like button for us. We both really do appreciate it. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you would like to stay up to date with the new cryptocurrencies, the hidden gems, the technical analysis and news, then go ahead and subscribe. By subscribing, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed, so why not? Chris, anything else you want to add before we jump on down to the desktop and start taking a look at exactly what is going on here with Bitcoin and Cardano?
Yeah, so, I guess just to point out, we are validators for Cardano. So if you wish to support Cardano as a project and our channel as well, Cheeky Crypto, and you're not delegating, you could delegate to the Cheek pool using the ticker Cheek, and join the 1,183 delegators that are delegating over 14 million ADA already. That's a great way to make a passive income. And like I say, it supports the channel, it supports Cardano, and it also makes your money work hard for you, like you worked for your money.
Absolutely. Right, let's jump on down and get into everything Cardano.
Let's do it.
This video is sponsored by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app. With Crypto.com, you can buy that fear and sell your cryptocurrency. You can, of course, earn a juicy return on your investment and spend your cryptocurrency via their debit card. You can track all your transactions, and of course, we cannot forget their new NFT platform. So why not check out Crypto.com? Link is down in the description below, and you will get a $25 sign-up bonus. Okay, guys, to start with, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin here. This is Bitcoin on the daily chart. I'm just going to make everything visible so we can see exactly what is going on. Ultimately, what we want to really be focusing in on immediately here is how Bitcoin was down here at 31,000 and has recently risen up to about $38,000. Has had a bit of a pullback, and the question here is, as it reaches this fundamental resistance area, what does this mean for Cardano, and is this likely to affect ADA? So ultimately, with resistance here, and as being as low as we are with this relative strength index, Bitcoin does have a pretty good, strong opportunity to pierce this resistance line and take it to the next level, which would approximately put this thing at about $40,000. This is on the daily chart. So on the hourly chart, however, it does show us a slightly different story. If I make this a little bit bigger, you get an idea as to what is going on. Right now, we're actually at the upper end of those Bollinger Bands, and there is a short-term pullback that has to happen first. Once we get this pullback happening and completed, that will then gear things up nicely to move back to the upside, go past this resistance line, and potentially go up towards that $40,000 level. Now, this is really important to understand what happens with Bitcoin, because it does have a knock-on effect to Cardano. I think many people in this space are aware that ultimately the altcoins are kind of tethered to a Bitcoin at the moment. They haven't had that decoupling, although Cardano's ADA has actually withstood quite a bit and has been quite resilient to Bitcoin's price action recently. It has also been affected nonetheless. So right now, where we are having pullback from Bitcoin, the altcoins are also pulling back in line. But this is a short-term view, and I do think the longer-term picture here for Bitcoin is to push up a little bit higher towards the $40,000 area before it actually has another kind of major kind of correction or pullback. And when I say major, I don't mean a crash, I just mean a healthy correction to the downside, just to make sure that everything is lining up nicely, technically speaking. And obviously we have the relative strength index here on this hourly, which is actually in a pretty reasonable position at 56. So it is indicating that we do not have to drop down too much further to actually correct this relative strength index to a pretty good position to continue the price discovery here for Bitcoin, or at least continue the recovery of Bitcoin. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin, it's also very important that we do reference what's going on with our Bitcoin dominance. So with Bitcoin dominance, it's our expectation that Bitcoin dominance itself will actually rise up towards the 50% area. This is absolutely critical, and it is something that we've seen previously over here in 2017. And although this will not be identical to what's happened previously in terms of the 2017-2018 bull run, and it will be different just because there's so many more cryptocurrencies this time around, Bitcoin is having to share the market with everybody. So my expectations are that we'll actually go up towards the 50% area, and before we actually potentially rise a little bit higher and then have this altcoin run all the way down here, driving Bitcoin's dominance and down towards that 30% area. So ultimately, we were expecting this kind of spike that we're seeing right now for Bitcoin to get this traction ahead of those altcoins, and for Bitcoin dominance to basically continue like this to go up towards the 50% area. Once that happens and that's occurred, I would expect a bit of a pullback from here where altcoins start to catch up with Bitcoin, and that sentiment in the market generally will be changing for a more from a less fearful area to a more positive bullish sentiment. So that's what we were expecting, and at the moment this seems to be coming to fruition. Now the other thing that's important to obviously bear in mind is where we are within the cycle, right? So here we obviously have the stock to flow model. We've spoken about this on so many occasions, but it's also just important to be mindful of where we are. And one of the things that's come out recently is we've actually reached a rebound area for this stock to flow model, which we haven't seen since the 2017 all-time high. So basically what we're looking at is this 17 pullback here that we had, which is what we're having here, and what happened over in 2013. All of those have actually now aligned from a rebound point of view, and things are looking like they're going to be really heating up nicely when it comes to Bitcoin. And the expectations of this particular model, this stock to flow model, is that this will be pushing up towards that $200,000 Bitcoin. So again, things are looking pretty good, and nothing here has fundamentally changed. It's obviously slightly different to 2017, 2018, and different to that of 2013. But ultimately, that's somewhere between the two, and you can see a new pattern forming here, but it is still in line with the rebound area of this, and ultimately the projections are still here towards that $200,000 level. So again, all this is really important, but obviously this has a knock-on effect, right, guys? Because ultimately we're talking about a $10 Cardano price prediction for 2021, and in order to get there, there's got to be lots of different things that kind of compile together to make that happen. So the first thing we obviously have to bear in mind is that we are going to start seeing the Alonzo hard fork combinator actually happening. We see this on the testnet now, and it begins a countdown towards smart contracts actually reaching the mainnet, right? So once we have that smart contract functionality, and we've spoken about this many times over, we are expecting to see about 100 or so companies potentially migrating from Ethereum over to Cardano. Some of them will be small, some of them will be large. One of the biggest ones that's notable and has lots of speculation around it has to be Celsius, who pay millions upon millions of dollars in ETH fees, just to run their dApp, right? So for everyone who actually uses Celsius, you don't pay the fees. The actual business itself actually pays all the fees on the Ethereum network. So moving and migrating Celsius from Ethereum to Cardano doesn't just save millions of dollars for the actual business itself, but those are things that those fees can actually be passed back on to the users of Celsius as well. So where at the moment you're seeing a certain percentage yield from the app, or you're lending out at a certain rate, or you can borrow at a certain rate, ultimately all these things are considered with the fees. So when we talk about Celsius moving from Ethereum to Cardano, it doesn't just mean it's beneficial for the business, but it's also beneficial for all the users, because some of those fees and those rates can actually be adjusted according to the new business model that's more affordable, faster, and cheaper, right? So ultimately, there's going to be some fantastic things if that were to happen, and that's a pretty big piece of business from Ethereum that would be shifting over to Cardano. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that maybe even come to fruition, amongst obviously 99 other potential migrations from Ethereum to Cardano. So absolutely fantastic stuff is happening here in terms of that smart contract functionality. And that's only talking about the existing products and not talking about the new developments, those new innovations for Cardano itself that are being built right now. And there's a whole load of these guys. There's a whole website that Cardano with Pool is building to kind of get everyone up to speed with what is actually happening on the Cardano ecosystem. And we're going to drop a link for that one as soon as it is available. And we're in talks obviously with Cardano with Pool to make sure that we know exactly what's going on with that, and we can let everyone know as well. So do watch that space. So obviously smart contracts are absolutely huge, and obviously with all this fantastic dApps being built upon the network, one of the main issues that you have with Ethereum currently has to be that scalability, right? And obviously when it comes to Cardano, they're actually going to be putting into prototype the Hydra solution. This actually sees 1 million transactions per second, which would be remarkable considering Ethereum's at about 30 transactions per second now, and even the ETH 2.0 that's delayed until I think it's late 2022 has only 100,000 transactions per second. This particular scalable solution, which is designed to run or to basically house millions of people on chain and potentially up to billions of people on chain, it really is going to be what drives Cardano and sets it apart from the competition. 1 billion transactions per second is not a small amount, and ultimately it grows with the number of validators. So the more validators that there are, the more transactions per second that you're going to get as a throughput. So this is a fantastic piece of development, and cannot wait really to see this thing actually hit that prototype stage and really push things through. And again, this is going to be absolutely vital to when we start seeing all those countries starting to run on chain. So absolutely fantastic stuff going on here. But of course, it doesn't end at this point either, because one of the parts of everything when we gel it all together has to be what happens when you have smart contracts, where you're going to need tools, right? So Cardano is to roll out smart contract tools in a new product suite. And again, we haven't really spoken about this too much, but there is a product called 𝗲𝗀 and the company's suite, right? This is basically the product suite, and it's named 𝗲𝗀, which includes the 𝗲𝗀 Build and the 𝗲𝗀 Pay. And this is all for developers. And this is through which smart contracts can retrospectively be built and tested, and 𝗲𝗀 run for end users to execute financial agreements on the blockchain using customizable open source templates. And this is really powerful stuff. So it's all about empowering people ultimately. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but it's very, very important that we understand what 𝗲𝗀 is and what role it plays within the ecosystem. And obviously as time progresses and as we get to a world where smart contract functionality rolls out, you're going to start seeing how important it is for things like 𝗲𝗀 and how developers can actually interact with the Cardano ecosystem in building and testing their dApps. This is absolutely crucial, and it's a fantastic piece of development work that not many people tend to talk about at the moment. But I do think this is going to get more and more important the closer and closer we get to smart contracts actually hitting that main net. So now we have a bit of a grasp of where Bitcoin is, and we understand why I'm really super bullish on that $10 kind of price prediction. It may even go above and beyond that. I'm just calling out $10 as a nice round number. And we have obviously spoken about potentially 15 and 20, but I'm just going to leave it at the lower band here and say $10. We can see how that's going to be achieved here through the use of smart contracts that are yet to roll out. We obviously have hundreds of companies moving over and migrating potentially onto the Cardano ecosystem, plus all the new innovation that's going to be built upon Cardano. And then, of course, we have that scalability solution that really enables it to have that high throughput, right? Have 1 million transactions per second at a low cost rate. So let's get into what's happening here and now when it comes to Cardano. So let's jump into the charts here. So here we have Cardano's ADA to the USDT. We're using Binance as the data source here, and this is actually the hourly chart. So right now we can see that we are in this kind of triangular wedge here just forming. We have this kind of banded area here for a support line. And this kind of just comes in at about approximately $1.48. We obviously have our downward trend here as well. So what I'm going to quickly do is actually shoot this back up into our daily view so we can see that at a bit of a a bit more detail, right? So we can obviously see this downward trend. It's pretty obvious. You can see there's a bit of a downward trend there. And we can also see this upward trend line forming here. Now, these two things will intersect, the downward trend and the upward trend, by the 18th, 19th of June, right? So we've got a couple of weeks here or so just to kind of see how that one plays out. Maybe it's about a week or so. So we'll have to see how that one plays out and if we're going to get this breakout event down here, or whether or not our resistance line that you can see here, sorry, our support line that you can see here, where we've had today's wicks go down to, we've had 2 days ago also bouncing from this area. And if we look back, this is another major area of resistance just on this side of the chart. So right now, this is a good, interesting area, but this actually forms a triangular wedge kind of forming to this downside here. And are we likely to get a breakdown at this point or a break up? And this is why it was super important that we spoke about what happens with Bitcoin, because whatever Bitcoin does will have an impact as to whether or not by this point in time we have that breakdown or break up. So let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. Let's jump down into our hourly and see what's going on within this triangular wedge and why it could be super interesting to see how this plays out. Right now, we obviously have the Bollinger Bands on here as well, so we can see those lower areas and those higher areas, the midway points as well. We obviously do have our moving averages, the 50, 100, and 200, and right now we are basically tracking below those, right? So we're below average value. We have the 50 moving average, the 100 moving average, and the 200 moving average just above. So we know that our average value is actually higher than the current value of ADA. So we're below average value. We also have a relative strength index that's actually quite low as well, and we're heading towards the lower area of the Bollinger Bands. So ultimately, these things are kind of coupled together are telling me that Cardano ADA is likely to have a move to the upside in the short term. Now, obviously, we have that longer term piece. We can talk about where things are likely to go during wave 5, and we obviously have that as an idea of a $10 range. And in the short term, we obviously have a bit of time here to figure out what happens if we continue this downward direction here and go real low towards those Bollinger Band limits. Then we could start to actually see a breakup happening here, breaking our downward trend altogether, which would be a really bullish signal and would also allow us to potentially catch up with those average lines as well, and potentially see the average of the 50 moving across maybe even the 100 and 200 averages as well. So it's super important to see how this plays out over the next kind of 24 to 36 hours to see what happens by the time we come over here towards that 14th of June area, see if we are going to invalidate this downward trend and have that breakout event. And obviously, as we are approaching the lower end of the Bollinger Bands, we are expecting to move that price to the upside in the next kind of 12, maybe even 24 hours. So I'm expecting a bit of a pump with Cardano's ADA here. Now, of course, we obviously had to acknowledge what goes on with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is at that critical point. Bitcoin has reached resistance, and if it is unable to pierce through that and has a bit of a pullback, we can expect that ultimately ADA will also have that pullback as well. So in a roundabout way, we're actually hoping that Bitcoin is able to withstand the pressure and is able to go ahead and push up towards that that $40,000 range. If it's able to do that, we should see Cardano's ADA do something very similar, break out of this downward trend altogether and push the upper boundary of those Bollinger Bands and really push to strive to get out of this kind of downward trend and into a new recovery phase. So ultimately, things here on the short term are looking very, very interesting, but they are kind of tethered to what Bitcoin does. Now, what I'm going to do is just pull this back up into our daily, where we'll just briefly talk about what things are looking like in that bigger piece, right? Where does this thing look like? Where does ADA look like it's going to be come the end of the bull run? And this seems to be a common question that we get asked quite a bit. And obviously, I kind of like pulling up this bigger macro view so you can see where we have come from and where we are going. Okay, so obviously from March of 2020, we can see that ADA was at the low point. We obviously have that peaking out in wave 1 up here in July. Wave 2 was the correction wave towards the end of 2020. And wave 3 was obviously the peak that we saw in May. We are in correction wave 4 now, and obviously wave 5 has the potential to go all the way up to that $10 range and maybe even further beyond that. Ultimately, the Fibonacci retracement tool with those extensions are showing us about $7.20. So my lower end here, my lower kind of price prediction for Cardano is between $7.20 and $10. But all of that fundamental stuff that we've been speaking about that hasn't actually been included in any of this technical analysis is yet to actually be included, right? So ultimately, it could push much further beyond that $10, $15, even $20 range, depending on how strong those migrations happen from Ethereum to Cardano and what kind of new innovation actually gets built upon this network. And if there is so much fresh new innovation plus all of those migrations happening, this thing could really seriously explode to the upside. So again, I put my lower band here of $10 for Cardano's ADA come the peak of the bull run and the peak of wave 5. But again, I could be off here and I could be really undershooting this thing, and it could be significantly higher. Chris, now this is everything I've kind of got from a technical point of view, and kind of talking through some of the recent news and things like that I'm seeing in the space. But is there anything else you feel I've missed that might be worth kind of bringing up with the audience?
Not that you've missed anything, Nick, but yeah, it'd probably be worth just sort of talking through Africa, right? You know, because you've got 25 million students that are going to be onboarded to the blockchain, the Cardano ecosystem, you know, which is remarkable. You know, this is a project that is doing amazing things for people in the real world, right? Changing people's lives. This is stuff that most of us would take for granted, but you know, they're basically giving everybody identification and all this sort of wonderful stuff, right? And obviously it starts in Ethiopia, but we're going to see this probably sort of expand, and we're going to see real adoption for blockchain in Africa, which I think is going to be remarkable. But you know, that's just one aspect. You mentioned like the likes of Celsius and that side of things, but you've also got World Mobile, right? They're going to be sort of onboarding people onto the internet and the telephones and all this sort of stuff. You know, there's all these you know, people sort of around 18, 20s that, you know, would love to access the internet on their phones and stuff like that. This is all going to generate like a brand new economy really within Africa. I think this is remarkable stuff, and I think we're only scratching the surface. You're going to start to hear more about some of these wonderful projects. So if you're not a member, join over on the membership side of things. There's going to be quite a lot of videos that I'm going to drop personally, just on some of these projects that are doing wonderful things.
Fantastic. So yeah, do check that out, guys, and head over to the member section. Right, with that said, hopefully you found this useful, informative. If you have, then do go ahead and hit that like button. We both really do appreciate that. And of course, if you happen to be new to the channel and you'd like to stay up to date with the new cryptocurrencies, those hidden gems, the technical analysis and news, then why not go ahead and subscribe? By subscribing, you'll be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here. It is free. You'll stay well informed. So why not? Make sure you tap the bell and hit all. Right, with that said, done and out of the way, we hope everyone has a fantastic day, guys, and we'll catch you all in the next one.
Yeah, take care.